Hello, everybody. Let's give you a chance to log in and then we will start. Hi. Oh, look, it's the sun. And then it's raining. And then there's sun. And then it's raining. Welcome to Santa Clara County. I hope you're having a good day on Friday. Well, I got some fun stuff for you. Hi, everybody. My name is Terry Rogaway, and I work with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. As you can tell, I love nature, and I love sharing nature with all of you. So let's figure out what happens during the romantic times of some of our animals. Since it's February, everybody's talking about Valentine's Day and things like that. So I was kind of curious about, what does wildlife do? What kind of romantic life do they have? Well, I found out. So I will share it with you. Just to get started, though, here is our mission. The Open Space Authority conserves the natural environment. I love that part. We support agriculture and we connect people to nature by protecting open spaces, natural areas, and working farms and ranches for future generations. Oh, love is in the air. Wouldn't it be great if we could get our oak trees to do this? Actually, this is much more realistic for the beautiful way that our parks are starting to look now that it's raining. And with the rain comes the spring, and with the spring comes all of the wildlife and lots of babies. Woo! Drama. These great blue herons are so dramatic, aren't they? Look at them. I dare you to try to do that with your spouse. So it turns out that these guys are really great at eating things like gophers and toads and things like that. But what's their romance like? Well, it turns out that what happens is the boys will fly to an area that has water and a spot where usually a nest already exists. So I think that's kind of cheating. Instead of building a nest from scratch, he gets one that already has a foundation. And then he waits around for the girls to show up. Oh, lightning is striking. Drama. Look at these guys. Aren't they so pretty? So here he is hanging out by the water, thinking about what it's going to be like when the women show up, right? And then what happens is they do. So the females will then come to the area where the males have set up their nests. And so they do this thing. I think this is kind of cute over here. So what these guys do is, like when you feel romantic, you might hold somebody's hand, right? Well, it turns out that great blue herons hold beaks. So this is two of them that like each other. They'll stick their little tufts of feathers up. They kind of fluff their necks up and they're like, oh, it's so pretty, it's so pretty. And then they grab each other's beak and they're like, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So that's part of their courting, is to flirt with each other by fluffing their feathers, rubbing their beaks like you saw or their necks against each other like you saw in that last picture. They'll rub their beak down the other bird's feathers and then they hold beaks. So notice they're standing on some twigs and stuff, right? She must really like that spot. Isn't this dramatic? Ta-da! Here's a twig. And believe it or not, she gets really excited about twigs. So what he'll do is he will bring her little sticks and twigs and things so that she can continue to form the rest of the nest. And so this is part of their courtship where, she feels all romantic towards him and all of this kind of stuff. And so cute. Here's a twig. Wouldn't it be nice if it was that easy for us? Oh, look at these babies. This is what the babies look like. Have you noticed? Nobody ever looks really fancy when they're little bitty babies. Not when the bird families, anyways. These guys always look a little scrappy and kind of like, what's going on with your hairdo? Oh, your feather do, and things like that. And then I giggle at this picture because there's dad in the background going, boy, these kids are loud. I don't know, man, what I get myself into. These kids are loud. And it turns out that the mom actually takes care of the babies. So the dad comes just for the season, hangs out. He might help collect some food, but probably not. He might just hang out nearby, but he doesn't hurt his own young and things like that. but his mom is taking care of everybody. Dun, dun, dun. So they have romance. It's very dramatic. It's very cinematic and all those kinds of things. It's very beautiful looking. But then once the babies are born, it's kind of like, all right, it's up to mom. She's got the babies. Oh, how about these guys? These guys are hanging out right now on Mayan or Yakima Coyote Ridge. So if you come out to visit the preserve when it stops raining, right now the preserve is the hiking trails up are closed down because it's way too wet. And we don't want you to slip or anything like that. But right now, you know, the elk are starting to get ready to have their babies. And so these are two males right here that are like, hey, is that a girl over there? Hi. So it turns out that this is the smallest of the elk species that we have here. And they've made a tremendous comeback, tremendous. And so what these guys will do is their breeding season, or their rut is what they call it, is right around August, you know, from August to October. So late summer, fall, that's when they're having their romance and things. But they start having their babies from March to October. So right when the wildflower season starts to really kick off is when we do need to be careful, make sure we stay on trails, because these gals that, well, these are males, but the females will go off on their own and have a baby and then come back to the little mini herd that they have of other females that they hang out with. And they also have some of the younger males that were not strong enough to fight the big males yet. So we just have to be aware of them and that they can get startled and stuff like that. But what is the deal with these guys with their romance, right? Because they're so huge. They're like almost horse size. They're pretty big. And so the ones with the little spikes here are males that are young. So they're probably only like a year or two old. They're not strong enough yet to fight the males in order to get a herd, like a harem, I should say. So this is what the females look like. Oh, you notice all those little things on their hair where it's like sticking up? Just by the way, that's probably ticks. Do not try to touch the Tule elk. Not that you will ever get the chance, because the second they see us, they take off. But they can look across, they have this big, beautiful nose, which means they smell everything. So the moment you're walking around on the ridge, they can smell you. The moment that a really strong, attractive male elk shows up, they can smell him too. And in fact, that's part of what happens. So I found out that the male Tule elk will actually, get this, they pee-pee, so they urinate on the ground. Sometimes they'll very carefully stick their rack, like their antlers, down and try to pee on their antlers. Apparently, that's like the best perfume ever. That's like Axe body spray or whatever. So what they do is if they don't do it that way, they'll pee on the ground and then they roll around in it. And apparently that is like really attractive to the females. It's true. They really like it. And with that big nose, they can smell them from a mile away. And so that's how they know, oh, there's a big male over there. And they can also sort of tell like how big he is and if he's really strong and things like that. So like if a little wimpy one tried to do it, it probably wouldn't have as much testosterone or musk, things like that. But they're like, hey, there's a guy over there. Hey. And then what happens is in the summertime, at the end of summer, the males will try to emasculate each other. So they try to, they don't fight with their hooves when they're fighting each other. They use their antlers. So they'll lock antlers and like bam, bam, bam. And part of this is a display for the females to see who's the strongest, because they want to mate and have babies and hang out with the strongest one. And so the males will like whack each other with their antlers and try to compete and see who's the strongest. And then most of the time it doesn't result in too much violence. Like they're not like stabbing each other and stuff like that. But what will happen is the males will decide, okay, you won, and this guy takes off. And then this male will go over, and they are polygamous. So what'll happen is the male will have a whole bunch of females that's in his harem, in his little herd that he takes care of, and he protects them fiercely all during the mating season. When it's over, he's like, okay, whatever, bye. And he like takes off. And then all of the females will get together with the really young males and they'll hang out together for safety. And the males sort of go off in their own bachelor herd and take off, but they don't stick around to help take care of the babies or anything like that. These guys are amazing. They're majestic. They're huge. When you see them, they'll be this big and like 2 hills over. And the first time I ever saw one, I went, what is up with that funky looking sheep? Because the rear end, the rump is really fluffy and looks like a sheep to me. And I was like, what is that? Oh, is that Thule out? That could be you right now, as soon as it stops raining on my Yakima Coyote Ridge. So I encourage you to bring your binoculars and get your butterfly pass and come out and see if you can see them, especially now before the wildflower season takes off. If you're curious about what the babies look like, the females will have 1 to 2, usually 2 fawns, like offspring. And so the females are called cows, right? And then they'll have the babies. So just like deer, they have like little spots on them and stuff. And so it helps the babies to blend in and things like that. And you can see this one in the front, the boy. He still has felt on his little tiny nubs. So every year, their antlers fall off. Isn't that a lot of work to regrow those things? Especially if you're a big male who's got 14 points. Wow, that's a lot of energy. They must have to eat a lot of grass for that. So you might have the romance of having the strongest, most intense, best fighter as a male to mate with, but once the season's over, he's gone. And then you have to see what happens next year. So lots of suspense. Oh, look at that. It's a Western toad. I actually like these guys. These guys and gals are like really funny. And so we have these. So if you have these in your yard, it's a really good sign. It means that your yard is actually very healthy and doesn't have a lot of chemicals and things like that. And chances are, if you have these toads in your yard, there's water nearby, and they're the same families of toads, like generation after generation, because they actually don't go that far. So they don't really spread out that far. So you could be talking to Mr. Toad's great-great-grandson, right, in your yard, and that's a good sign, very healthy. So during the season, and then where's my little note, I get excited talking about these guys. I'm like, oh, so January, just last month, is when they call them explosive breeders. That's the only one that I saw that actually had that title, explosive breeder. Here's why. So the males will find a little area that's got a little bit of water in it, like a little creek or a pond, and they're like, oh, this is a good spot. And then he starts singing. Oh, oh. It sounds more like a little chirp, chirp, kind of like a cross between a chirp and a duck. And so he sings his little heart out, and the females go, oh, what's that? Whoa. And they start looking for him. So when she comes to him, she's like, oh, that's the person who's singing. Oh, he's got such a nice voice. Ooh, romance, right? And then this is what happens. Dun, dun, dun. Now, do not worry, parents. Basically, what happened is the second she showed up, she got herself a boyfriend backpack. With toads, when they have babies, everything happens on the outside of their body. So he has literally got his hands under her armpits and is holding on and won't let go. Doesn't she look annoyed? She's like, get off of my back. But he's holding on to her. Oh, I get to have babies. I get to have babies. And finally, it takes her just a couple hours to get fed up with this, right? So she'll walk over to the little edge of the water and she'll back down into the water and she will release these huge strands of eggs. How many, you may ask? 1,600, 1,600 eggs. Wow. No wonder they're called explosive breeders. But she'll do that. And he sits on top of her back and he releases his reproductive material. And so while she's squirting these eggs out, he's squirting his stuff out into the water, and it's fertilizing the eggs as these huge streams of eggs come out. And once that's done, the mommies, they don't take care of the eggs or anything like that. They're just kind of like, okay, I'm done. And then they take off. So as soon as they're done doing that, he'll let go. So if you're out and you're exploring and you see a toad and you're curious as to if it's a boy or a girl, the girls tend to be bigger, but that's because they have to carry the backpack. But also the boys have a reflex. So see where his hands are? His little froggy hands, right? So if you reach down very gently with your fingers like this and you go, whoop, and you pick him up and you put your fingers in his armpits, if it's a boy, he'll go. It kind of sounds like a tiny chihuahua. And what happens is he's going, no, 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 I'm a boy, I'm a boy, I'm a boy, just in case you didn't know. So that's what he does. And it's a reflex. He can't help it. It's kind of like, makes me giggle every time I hear it. If it's a female, she'll go, oh, and she like sucks in all this air and she sort of like inflates. And it's because she thinks you're going to eat her. So she tries to swell herself up with air so big that you'll choke if you try to swallow her. I think that's the idea. And they also like to pee on you. So that's a defense mechanism. So be warned, you will get peed on by a toad. And that is part of your American experience growing up on the West Coast. So don't be upset if they do it. They're just protecting themselves and they just thought you were going to eat them. So when the romance is over, the boy frog goes away and everybody just goes back to their routine. Not a whole lot of romance, but check out all these eggs. See how they're like in little tubes? Whoa, explosive breeders. Stinky Pew! I love the Stinky Pew. You probably don't love the Stinky Pew if the Stinky Pew happens, in the middle of the night while you're trying to sleep. So I wondered, what's the deal with these skunks? Because they actually start their breeding time usually in November. So that's when you want to watch out. If you have any holes around your house, the floor level, they will dig in. But the thing is, here's the thing, they don't hang out for very long. They just stay there like a week or two, and then they move. So apparently they do that a lot. Like, so if you get some under your porch or your house or something, and you're like, oh no, they're stinky, these skunks will actually move someplace else pretty soon. And if you want to move them on faster, you can just put light under there, like a work light, and they don't like that. So they will move on. So don't worry about that. And so what happens is, I was wondering, what's the deal with these guys and their romance? So it turns out that the stinky that they do with their tail, so in case you didn't know, skunks have a gland in the back of their body that they can spray this really stinky stuff, really stinky, and they can spray it like 10 feet. So if you have a pet dog, or if you startle one by accident, or if you're a park ranger trying to get one out of the visitor center because somebody left the door open and it came in, then you might get sprayed. And if you do get sprayed or your pet gets sprayed, this stuff like seeps into your pores. It's really hard to get off of you. It won't hurt you. You just be stinky. Might hurt your social life. So turns out that the females, if they don't like a male, they stink on them. So they'll actually spritz them a little bit just to get them away. And it works. So I'm like, you mean they don't like each other stinky either? Whoa. Sometimes, if she does like him, sometimes when they're mating, she might spray a little bit by accident too. So that can happen too. And I wondered because the females are not that vocal. And I heard a sound one time under the porch and it was this. I'm like, oh, who's being hurt? And what I found out is that's actually not the girls. That's the boys. So if you get a really aggressive male skunk and he likes a female and she's put up with him enough where she didn't stink on him, and she's like, okay, yeah, we could have babies. Sometimes when he's being really aggressive and stuff, he will chirp, squeal, chitter, and shriek. I'm like, oh, great. These guys are nocturnal, which means in the middle of the night, you're going to hear this and go, oh my gosh, what is that, a monster? It's just a stinky pew skunk. So that's what they do. And then what'll happen is she'll have kids. And as soon as she gets pregnant, he takes off. So mom has the kids and then the dad splits. So he takes off, goes about, does his own thing. And then mom will give birth to the babies, and they're so cute. I've actually seen this in my yard before. So they're really attracted to, like, if you have fruit trees and if you have cat food. Oh, guilty. If you have cat food and you forget to bring it in at night, you will get skunks eating the cat food. So if you don't want them, then don't do that. And then the other thing that can happen is different times of year, if you're watering the garden or the lawn too much, then these big fat worms that turn into mayflies, or some people call them mosquito eaters, those big crane fly things that are like, looks like spiders and stuff. So those big fat grubs will grow in your garden or in your lawn. And these guys love to eat them. They're like, whoa, Cheetos. They will dig up your whole yard trying to get these little bugs. So if you don't want that to happen, don't water so much. And then the bugs will go deeper, because the reason the grubs are coming up is because they're drowning. And they're like, oh no, it's raining, we're gonna drown. So right now, while it's raining, those grubs might be coming up to the top because they're trying not to suffocate. And so you might still get skunks digging in your yard. But yeah, so that's what happens. And it turns out, so skunks don't mate for life. They have romance, and then the mom's taking care of the babies and the dad's not in the picture. So I'm like, oh no, is this making you feel better about your romantic life? All these animals kind of take off, right? Just so you know, skunks and cats cannot have babies together. Sorry, Pepe Le Pew. Nope, they can't do it. They're two entirely different species, and it will not happen. Look at this little hummingbird. We have this really amazing photographer here at the Open Space Authority. His name is David, and he takes these crazy pictures. So he actually got this picture of this hummingbird like drinking nectar. And so I was wondering, okay, these birds are really athletic. What's this like? So it turns out that the hummingbirds will do all kinds of crazy displays when they're trying to show the females how cool they are. So the first thing the male has to do is he has to find a really good source of food. So that could be a giant fuchsia bush or a giant bush that has lots of flowers on it. And usually the kind that are tubular like this, where it's like his beak can fit in there, right? And drink the nectar. So what'll happen is he gets himself a really big bush of flowers or your hummingbird feeder in your backyard, and he starts to guard that resource. And then he sings as he's guarding it. So the females will come and then, you know, if he likes them and if they like each other, he lets the females eat from the same, you know, source that he's got, but he'll chase the other boys away. So that happens, you know, they'll chase each other and stuff. And I was wondering, you know, how big are these, right? Because these hummingbirds are tiny. They're like, you know, the size of your finger and things like that. And their heartbeat is like 1,200 beats a minute or something. And I'm like, wow, what happens if they get excited? How much does it go up? Has anybody ever registered that or registered? But that's a quarter. And there's the size of the eggs, tiny little eggs. And the nest is tiny. So you probably won't even notice it. And then I put this other picture here so you could see that their beaks actually open. For much of my life as a child, I thought that hummingbirds just had a tube. You never see it open, you just see the tube, and they're always drinking out of things with this tube. And I thought, that's a weird bird, man. Their beak doesn't open at all. It does. It does open. So Anna's hummingbirds actually eat more bugs than any other hummingbird. So that's kind of interesting, in case you wanted to know. But you can look for these little nests, just be very careful. A lot of times they'll look like lichen because they decorate it that way on purpose. And so yeah, interesting creatures. Ooh, bay checker spot butterflies. Woo! So these guys are actually going to be all over my Yakwa Coyote Ridge. In fact, they already are, not as butterflies. So what's happening is it turns out that we have this really incredible threatened species of a butterfly. And in 2022, the National Fish and Wildlife Service did a request to move the status up to endangered because there are so few of these left. And right here in your open space at Mayano Yakima Coyote Ridge, you can actually see these this coming spring. So right now, everybody's caterpillars. So what I'm trying to say is that they don't migrate. They're all still there all year long. So right now would be when the males would be starting to wake up. So they'll start to wake up and they're like caterpillars, and they're crawling around and they eat and eat and eat and eat. So they have like 2 phases of feeding that they'll do. So they're starting to wake up right now with all this rain. It means that the grass is growing. It means that the flowers that they need are growing and things like that. And so what'll happen is they'll hatch in March, April, May. So you'll get these little caterpillars and they eat and eat and eat and eat, and they get too big, so they molt, and then they eat some more and they molt, and they eat and molt like 3 times. Oh, and then what happens is they're still caterpillars. They go to sleep. So all of summer, they're like asleep under rocks, in the cracks, anywhere they can find to take shelter. They kind of like just go dormant and go to sleep. And then what happens is in the springtime, as it gets closer, they'll actually form like a little chrysalis, and they'll emerge in March and April as butterflies. But once they're butterflies, they only last about 10 days. So the males will come out a little bit before the females do. So they sort of get a head start. So when you see these out on the ridge, they look like they're made out of stained glass. They're absolutely gorgeous. And they're about like quarter size. They're just like, and so what'll happen is, if you come around, like when the park will open at 10, and if you get into, on a weekend, you'll need to like get a reservation to go with a tour guide to go up. And then we'll take you up there. And what you'll notice is you'll see as they start to wake up, there's these beautiful little spirals of these little stained glass looking butterflies. And they'll come all around you. They'll start like, woo. And so they're actually mating in flight sometimes, and then on the ground. And when they close their wings, they just look like leaves. So they could protect themselves in the grass that way. But when we see them, their wings are open. And so they'll also open and close and open and close. And that's kind of like flirting with the females. And then they'll just do this little beautiful spiral type little flight dance, I guess. So you get to see a lot of them. And then what happens is the female has one plant that she really likes. And that plant is the dwarf plantain. So this grows in the serpentine soil. So their whole life, their whole romance, all of their children, everything is in the same area with the same soil and these little plants. So you can see what this little bay checker spot butterfly caterpillar looks like. So they're really fuzzy, and very black. He looks a little bit like he's dewy. So they're usually very black looking with these little spikes of like orange. And they eat like nobody's business. So the mommy will lay the eggs at the base of the dwarf plantain. The entire plant is like this big. It looks like a Q-tip to me. You're like, whoa, but it's like this big. And she'll lay the eggs down here. And when the caterpillars hatch, they'll climb up to the end of the grass and they're like, nom, 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 nom. We actually have video of that I'm going to see if we can post that on our website again for you to see. You can check it out. But they'll do that. They eat voraciously. And the reason that she lays the eggs here is because that's what the babies eat. They don't eat other plants really until they're flying around as butterflies. So she has to deposit them on the food source. So a male will mate with several females. Females usually mate with one male and then they're done. They go and lay their eggs. But the males will try to mate with several in order to spread the species. Ooh, so pretty. I like it because like on the top of their antenna, they have like these little tufts of orange and they have like these little orange shoulder pads and things like that. But you will get to see them. You will get to see them. The preserve is open. And right now, because of the rain, it's not, the upper part's not, but you can certainly come to the lower area and check it out. It's already beautiful and starting to grow. What's that? Oh no, back to the feline world, right? Oh, look at this guy. What is he doing? Look at them, they're like, oh, what a dork. What is up with that guy? What a dork. Oh, well, it turns out what he's doing is he has an organ in the roof of his mouth. It's called a Fleming response. So cats, just like the Tulio, cats are really into smell. So they can smell when somebody goes into heat. By the way, you may have noticed all of the ruckus already in your neighborhood. As soon as you have about 8 hours of sunlight, all of the regular cats also go into heat. Which means you're going to have lots of males that are screaming and yelling at each other. You'll have lots of females that are singing little songs, trying to attract the males to them. And sometimes you'll get the males that are walking around and also singing in order to get the attraction. But those are house cats. With the bobcats, they have this organ so they can open their mouth. And it looks funny when you see them and they're kind of like, they're actually smelling. It's kind of like HD smell. So that's what they're doing is really getting a sense of what they're smelling and getting a lot more information about it. And then, so like, you'll get a mated pair like this, but the mated pairs, they really just hang out. They don't mate for life. So what they'll do is they'll hang out, and the female, when she starts to go into heat, when she goes to the bathroom, the males will be able to smell that. So if she sprays on things or she pees on things, they can smell that there's a female in heat. And just in case they didn't get the memo, she also has glands in her face and and also on her feet. So she will go up to things and rub on them and put spit on them and put that gland on, oil type stuff on them, like that. And that's like, hello, I'm ready. And then the males smell that and they're like, oh. So they will go and find her. And once she becomes pregnant, the smell changes. So it does actually change. And all cats can have babies by multiple fathers. So you might have noticed that with house cats, how you get house cats that one looks like that guy from over there, and that baby looks like that guy over there. It's because they can do that. Not like other mammals or like humans, we can't really do that. But bobcats do. Aw, look at that, so cute. So here's a female and she's got the babies and she's nursing. And so, she usually have like two or three babies. It is a danger if they just have one. So if they were to just have one, what happens is having two babies stimulates her to produce more milk. So there's more for the babies to eat. If you have one, and this is the same for other larger cat species too, if you have just one baby, sometimes it's not enough stimulation to keep the milk going long enough. So there is a chance that the milk might dry up sooner than if she has more. So like in zoo settings where they're like trying to increase the species of different cats, they will give them fosters in order to make sure that the milk continues to produce so that they can have more successful babies. But what about dogs? Because remember, so far, everybody's relationship breaks up after they have babies. So once they get pregnant, that's kind of it, right? Except for coyotes. Woo! So most of the time when you see them like this guy over here, like sitting by himself. And this is over in Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve, by the way, with a really big telephoto lens, and we were like way far away. But they do mate for life. They do stay with their family. And so, so if you want like oh, just such a nice romance, coyotes actually do. Most of the time you go, how come I never see them in the park? Because this is what they look like. If he's sitting in a bush like this and he's been really quiet, you won't see him, right? It's like, uh-oh. And there is a lot of sniffing that goes on. So when the female, she actually chooses the male that she wants to be with. And the hierarchy is that there is an alpha female. So she will be in charge of the pack. She'll choose a male that she wants to mate with, and then they start roughhousing. So they sort of like play and that kind of stuff. And then when she gets closer to like being even more in heat, what'll happen is the reason he's smelling her is because her scent will change. And it's like, okay, now I can get pregnant. So when she goes to the bathroom or she just has this smell, he'll know. And he's like, oh, okay, now it's time. Now it's time. So they will have many litters over the years with each other and take care of each other that way. Look at the babies. Lots and lots of babies. So what happens is in a pack, their packs are smaller than wolves. Wolves have really big packs, or they have potential for big packs, and they're really comfortable with that. But in a coyote pack, it's going to be about 7 to 10 coyotes usually, and they'll have a den. And most of the time, it's like maybe, I would say it's like, 6 or 7 adults, and the rest are babies that they're all raising and things like that. So some of them will hang out and stick around, and then the other ones are like, once they become sexually mature, the males will leave and the females, will stick around until they sense another male that they might want to breed with, and then they go start their own pack type thing. So, interesting. You might hear them, especially if you're like over in the Almaden Valley and things like that. You might hear coyotes. They do that yipping and that singing to celebrate all kinds of things. So when somebody kills a squirrel and has food, they'll yip and sing. When they're trying to tell another coyote pack, hey, this is our territory, besides just going to the bathroom on things, they will sing and stuff like that. And that reminded me. So that's the other thing that'll happen is the male and the female will go all around their territory. She'll go to the bathroom first, and then he goes to the bathroom on top of that. So it's dual scent marking. And by the way, we're a mated pair. And by the way, the female's getting ready to have babies, so stay out. And they'll go around and they'll do that like all around their territory. So that's kind of nice. It's like a wedding announcement. Look at that, alpha female, woo! What is up with this thing? Oh, wow. So you might have seen these in the park before. These are oak galls. And I was like, what is that? It looks like Christmas ornaments, or I don't know, somebody threw a ball up there in the oak tree and stuff like that. So it's actually created by this tiny little oak gall wasp. So if you're feeling like, imagine being this oak gall wasp and she's flying around and she can't find another male and she really wants to have babies, but she can't find another male. They have a special adaptation that allows them to make their own babies. So what she does is she finds the tree that she likes, and the ones that I'm talking about are the oak gall wasps. And she digs a little hole, and she puts her ovipositor in the hole, and then she deposits eggs. And the eggs have a fake hormone on them that tells the tree, grow, 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 grow. So it's kind of like if you went up and you touched a tree and you said, grow me a house and put some pizza in the fridge. That's what it does. Tells the tree to grow this oak gall. It has all the food and the water that the baby larva will need. And she has the eggs inside there, and they grow up and they eat everything that they want to inside there until they're ready to emerge. And then you'll see this little tiny, tiny little hole. And out comes this little, it's so tiny. It's this tiny. Tiny, tiny. Like, did I see that or not? I don't know. I think a bug just flew out of that thing. So that's what will happen. And because she doesn't have a male, all the babies are clones and they're all female. So it has been a couple 100 years since anybody has seen a male oak gall wasp. So if you want to be a scientist and figure out how to tell if it's a male or female, that could be a good doctoral, project for you to try to find a male oak gall wasp, because it started as a disaster and they needed to keep producing. So they were able to keep going. But now nobody can find the males. We don't know if there's any left. The danger to this is that if the female were to get sick, they're all exactly the same. So they would all get sick if they were close to each other. So, hey, if you can't find a husband or a wife, well, in this case, a husband, then you could always be like the oak gall wasp and have your own babies like that and raise them on your own. Oh, So let's see. So I hope you enjoyed this little presentation. And I'm really glad that you decided to join us on this Friday. And now that we have a couple moments of sunshine, please do go out and enjoy it. And if you have any questions or anything, you can always feel free to email me at trogaway, TROGOWAY at openspaceauthority.org. And I would be very happy to answer your questions. Or if you think of something you would like to learn about, you can always tell us and we will create programs all about that. We like to do that. It's really fun. Okay. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And please enjoy your weekend and stay safe out there with the weather. And if you get a chance to come see Mayano Yakima Coyote Ridge, please do. And once it dries out a bit, we would love for you to be able to come and go up the hill, but it's still really cool to come see. So hopefully we'll see you out there. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you later. Hi, Julie.